So we have with us Anil Garg, as I mentioned, who is often referred to as the father of internet in India. So Anil, firstly, thank you very much for so generously agreeing to have this conversation with us.
My
Thank you
pleasure.
very much. And really, as I told you earlier, just about when we were starting off, that whenever a person does something, starts something, there's always something to compare it against. Like there's always a background, something available. But for you, there was obviously no internet when you started, right? So what I really wonder, and I'm sure that all our audience would want to know, is how did you get into the middle of this revolution of technology?
It was actually a bit of an accident. When I was in school, I started seeing these computer printouts. In those days we had these 132 column uh, big printers which would print out, and the paper was not made in India. So that was great paper. It used to feel excellent, and we used to use the backside of those papers for all our rough work and notes and stuff. And that got me very interested in seeing what's on the other side, the printed side, and that was largely people were doing programming in Fortran,
Okay.
in the universities especially,
Uh-huh.
which is where the papers would come from. And I got very interested, and Fortran looked very easy. So, and by accident, I came to know of a college where they were going to they had started or going to start a course in computer science.
Oh, okay. Where was
at
that?
the REC Allahabad.
Okay. Okay. All right.
So that was a. So anyway, when I finished my school, I got through. And in those days, we had the National Science Talent Scholarship. Now we have the National Talent Scholarship. So Science Talent Scholarship limited you to study basic sciences, but it got me admission into a couple of places, BITS, Pilani, IIT Delhi. But then they were offering me streams other than computer science.
Oh, okay.
So I sat through the entrance exam to this REC Allahabad, and there were 3 seats for Punjab, and I got one of them. And I went into the college, and finally I got into computer science.
Okay. All right.
So we were among the early people to. At that time, nobody had heard of computer science in my part of the world.
Right.
So
Right.
we were not sure, but it was a great time because we had to do a lot of studies on our own, and fortunately we had a great library, and that's where you could see the work that was going on elsewhere in the world. A lot of journals were available, and when I passed out, I got selected by a couple of companies on campus, and I chose one of them which happened to be among the best organizations at that time, DCM Data Products. They used to design their own computers.
Oh, wow.
It was one of the first, it was actually the first company in the country to manufacture, design, and initially they started by making calculators.
Oh, okay. That's how they started.
That was
Calculating.
making them in India.
Okay.
you
Okay.
know. So, but then they started making business machines.
Right.
These are very, in today's technology, when you compare, they would be termed as very primitive. But these are the equivalent of the 1401s of IBM,
Right.
which was what most people had
At the time.
at that time.
Right. So it was pretty revolutionary for its time.
It was very revolutionary for its time,
Right.
way ahead. And we used to have visitors from companies which are now so big, Intel and all. These are all household names for us, so to speak.
Correct.
So I was in the R&D team, and we actually designed a multi-user computer, the first multi-user computer
Wow.
with terminals for everyone. Because till then, in most organizations, people were using Hollerith cards, those 80-column punch cards
Okay.
for doing the programming,
Okay.
and it was not very interactive.
Correct.
So these were the early days when the IBM PC had just about come out.
Okay.
It had not yet landed in India, and finally we also started looking at making such computers. But anyway, to cut a long story short, in the
Yeah.
interim, I had some friends in TIFR,
Okay.
which is a research lab for physics and maths.
Okay.
But they also had a great computer science team there.
All right.
And I was always very keen to get there, and so I got an opportunity. There was an entrance exam, so I took the exam, I passed, cleared the exam, I got called for an interview, and it's probably the toughest interview I've ever had.
Okay. Right.
So I was, pleasantly surprised when I got called back after the interview, and they said, we want you to come back again. They said you've been selected.
Right.
So that's how I ended up joining TIFR, and my department, the head of the department was a communications guy,
Oh, okay.
Dr. Ramni.
Okay.
So he took me under him. He said, you have to work with me because you've worked for a few years, you've worked in the industry.
Right.
So we are going to do we are going to start consulting,
Okay.
because a lot of people in the government need our help. So in 1985, he put me on a project which was to design a computer network for the oil industry.
Okay.
An organization called OCC.
All right.
OCC was the Oil Coordination Committee, a standing committee of the Government of India, reporting to the Ministry of Petroleum.
Right.
And the objective was to manage the, coordinate between the various refineries and depots and, all the logistics.
Right. Right. So this is way before the modern day internet or even the dial-ups came into existence, right? This is way before that.
This is around that time when the internet was not there in that sense anywhere in the world.
Right.
At that point in time, in America, there was the ARPANET,
Okay. Which
which was a defense Department of Defense network.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
That was a DARPA project
Mm-hmm.
which had pushed out ARPANET.
Okay.
And we had some connectivity in India, but it was minimal. It was probably just maybe you could count it on one finger.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't there. There were networks. There was a network for the army, for instance, which was based around telex.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So they had telex machines which were networked.
Right.
So you
Right.
could, it was a private network for the army,
For the army.
which was built by ECIL, or
Okay.
Electronics Corporation of India,
Oh, okay. All right.
in Hyderabad.
Right. And in fact, to tell you,
Bangalore or
to interrupt,
ECIL Hyderabad, yeah.
Yeah, to interrupt, I'm sorry. For a lot of our viewers, especially the very young ones, I can tell you they don't know what is telex. So they don't actually go and Google and figure out what telex is.
Yeah.
So nevertheless, please continue.
Yeah, in those days, the only way to communicate was to use the telephone,
Right.
and if you had to make a long distance call, it was not a dial-up. You
Right.
could not do a long distance call. You had to speak to the operator. You had to ask for a particular city and the number.
Right.
And
Right.
then there was the normal call, which could take days.
Mhm.
Then there was a
Lightning call.
Yeah, that was very expensive.
Okay.
There was a intermediate thing which I'm forgetting, which was like important call. So then that was the next step. You would get
Okay.
priced
Mhm.
significantly high, and the lightning was very, very expensive.
Okay.
I mean, it was only used for emergencies.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And even the lightning call sometimes could take 1 to 2 hours or more.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you had to stay near the telephone because the
You could
telephone
get a call
exchange
at
would
any
call
time.
you.
Yeah.
So
Right.
these are very primitive times. And the other means were telegram. So you had to go to the telegraph office and send a telegram.
Correct.
And the third was, so the telegram was limited in the number of letters that you could send in a telegram.
It was like a tweet.
It was like a tweet.
In
And
today's
now we have,
context,
and now we
yeah.
have, now we have a Telegram app.
Yeah, we have
You
a
know?
Telegram app. which
And
is
the
really-
Telegram department actually closed down just a
Yeah.
few years back.
I'm aware of that. Yes. Correct.
So and then there was the telex.
Right.
The telex was a mechanism where you had it in. There was a teleprinter exchange. So instead of voice calls, you could punch in your message and then you could transmit it to another telex number.
Right.
So it was like a
Yeah.
fax.
It was like a chat. It was like a primitive chat. as
But
we
you
do
could send
today.
long messages.
Long messages.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
So, and the way to do that was also there were machines where you could type in your entire long message and they would print out a paper tape
Uh-huh.
with holes punched in it.
Yes.
And you could take that roll
Uh-huh.
and then transmit the whole thing at one shot to another telex number.
Correct.
So that is how it was done.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That is how telex
Got it.
messages are sent.
Right.
You have to punch your message because you could take time, somebody is dictating the message.
Correct.
So the typist, the telex operator will punch out your message on a paper tape
Right.
and then you would take it for transmission.
Okay. Okay. So it was after this, network setup for the oil companies that
Yeah.
the first, the event of internet really happened in India.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this was, so we looked at the oil industry. What was happening was they had a network of telex machines.
Right.
And that is how they would communicate between the depots and the ports and the oil company in different departments
Right.
across the country.
Okay.
And India was a large country, is a large country.
Right. He's a large country.
There were dozens of oil companies.
Correct.
OCC was also coordinating the import of oil
Okay. In the country.
into the country. So they had a dealing room with people sitting with dozens and dozens of telephones, and all the ships that were on.
They were at sea.
They were at sea, or the ocean. So there were some 55 ships which were permanently in the process of bringing oil
Right.
to India.
Correct.
So anyway, so OCC needed an upgrade
Correct.
from this telex-based thing.
Mhm.
So when they came to us in TIFR, they said, listen, you have to help us because there is nobody else who can help us in this. So that is when I formally got into computer communications.
Right.
And we looked at the whole thing and we said, we're not going to go and give them back another telex network.
Right.
Let's give them a computer network.
Right.
So they said, no, if you give us a computer network, there's going to be a problem because the oil, the people in the companies are going to make a big hue and cry.
Okay.
So India was anti-computers.
Okay.
They said if we get computers, then people will get unemployed.
Okay. Right.
So we
So
said
this
no.
is not a new argument.
Yeah.
A lot of people today also argue.
No,
how
they
to
argued
do-
a lot in those days.
Right.
You see, for instance, one of our great politicians, Charan Singh,
Okay.
who also became Prime Minister,
Mhm.
his son
Mhm.
was a computer science guy,
Okay.
Ajit Singh,
All right.
who also became a politician later on in life.
Correct.
So Ajit Singh was a computer science guy when he came back from the US. So he was my colleague in
Mhm.
DCM Data Products.
Okay. All right.
The difference was that we were rookies and he used to come and drive in his Volvo.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway,
Get that. Yeah.
so we decided to, and the reason was that TIFR had already been involved in computer communications.
Okay.
So TIFR had we had a DEC 10 in Colaba,
Mm-hmm.
and we had a DEC 20,
Mm-hmm.
a smaller computer in Air India building,
Oh, okay. Okay.
where we used to conduct our training classes and so
Right.
on.
So a distance of about maybe 2 or 3 kilometers.
2 or 3 kilometers by, yes, maybe more, because the telephone lines go via exchanges.
Okay, okay. So maybe more.
So so there was a lease line. They had earlier experimented with lease lines to other places like the University of Bombay.
Right.
So we had connected the two, deck 10 and deck 20, and we had a email system running between our own within our office and within the offices in the Air India building, and between the two.
Right. So it must have been like one of its kind in India.
One
at
of
the
its
time.
kind. One of
I
its
mean,
kind. One of its kind.
Nobody had access to that. Right?
Nobody had access to
Not
that.
in the public.
No. So we were used to electronic mail system, and in fact in 1995 I conducted a course where we got people to design a complex. We got about a few dozen students, almost 50 students, 60 students. So I used to go to Sidnam College and teach.
Okay.
Okay. This was our, one of the activities
Right.
apart from the R&D or whatever you call it, or applied technology.
Right.
So I taught a course where we actually made them design a intelligent document management system. So the idea was that you should be able to, for instance, a leave application, you should be able to just type it from your table and it should get routed automatically to the concerned department.
Wow.
Or the person. So it was an email with intelligence, where it gets routed on its own within the organization. So it was. So we were already looking at these technologies.
Correct.
And so we decided when we got this OCC project, that let's design something that looks like a telex network, but build it around modern computers.
Okay.
And that is what happened. So it took us about 2 years to get it done, because we had to identify the vendor who would supply and deliver not just the hardware, but also give us the necessary software. And so the specs were done by us, and the tenders were called for. It was a very complex tendering process, because we decided to keep the technology apart from the commercials.
Right.
And it was executed brilliantly. So that was the first network. So by 1987, that network had happened.
Okay. Operational.
That was operational.
Right.
So the first, they started implementing it, and we could see that it started
working.
Yeah.
This reminds me, I think it was Henry Ford. He had said, if I'd asked the customer, before building a car, what is it that they want? They would have said faster horses.
Yeah.
So I think this is something like that, where you, despite the customer being circumspect, build something around a new technology that would actually, make a world of difference.
Yeah. So what happened was that, exactly that. So what happened was that, excuse me.
Yeah.
So that was an era when you had to give, in various public sector outfits or in the banking sector, you have to give a keyboard allowance to people to touch a computer.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. Forget network.
Okay.
To touch a keyboard, they had to be given a keyboard allowance.
So you have to pay them?
You have to pay them.
To use a
additional
computer. To use a computer.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So those are primitive days.
Right.
I mean, we were pretty much in the beginning, and of any automation. So ATMs had just come into India.
Okay.
But to put up an ATM, you had to get a license for a branch. So ATM was considered like a bank branch.
Oh, okay. Right.
So, which is why you will not find too many standalone ATMs. You will find them always inside a bank branch.
Right. A lot of them are. Yes. Indeed.
Yeah. So, whereas if you travel globally, you will find them on the corner of a road.
Yeah, absolutely.
There is no bank in sight.
No, there's no bank in sight.